Tonight's second place finisher. Plenty of fans here, Brett, and a solid second place finish.
Yeah, I got to shout out the Turn 2 Terribles over there. They're all a bunch of good guys to hang out with, talk to. I really like them.
Welcome on in, everybody. Turn 2 Terribles here. It is January 2nd, 2023. Happy New Year, everybody. I am joined here with Chris and Jay-Z. We are the Turn 2 Terribles. We hope everybody had a great New Year. We have two special guests tonight, Jordan Givler and Nash Ely. But before we get to that, gentlemen, did you guys have a great New Year? I hope.
For sure did. Good time. Took the kid down, saw the wrench drop, because that's what you do in Mechanicsburg. You see a wrench drop.
I was in bed at 10 o'clock. Don't ask any more questions. I got some rest. So that was my New Year's. But it was a good New Year's Day. It was a great day. Spent time at home with the family, stayed inside, relaxed. It was good.
Awesome. We hope everybody out there that's joining us right now had a great New Year. Also, before we get into all this and bringing on our two guests tonight, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share it on whatever you're watching tonight. We've been trying to grow this thing here, and we've had great guests on to help us out with that, and we can't thank them enough. We can't thank you guys enough for tuning in, or if you're listening to this in on Spotify, on Amazon, on iTunes, on anywhere you get your podcast from. We really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to us, and we hope that we are bringing you the great content that you're trying to tune in for. So again, if anything you can do to subscribe and share it with your friends helps us out for sure. So let's get into it. Jeremy, you want to introduce our first guest?
Yeah, we're going to have some great guests tonight. You saw it on the previews. We're going to have Jordan Givler and Nash Ely with us. I'm going to make sure we're saying that right. We're going to ask him that. I want to make sure we're saying that right. But first, we're going to have Jordan Givler. We're mixing up tonight. We're going to do the 410 driver first. Appreciate him taking busy time out of the schedule. So let's welcome in Jordan Givler.
Jordan, welcome on in.
Here he is.
Hey, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, buddy. Welcome to the show, man. This one we've been excited for sure. And your biggest fan, Chris, up here, biggest fan. Okay,
Big fan.
Very big fan.
Because Dakota. We are. I didn't say the whole thing.
You can't say it. You can't
It's
say
going to be endless. It's going to be endless tonight with him.
You can't say it. You can't say it. It's like Beetlejuice.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I want to get started. Followed you a little bit here in the last year, Jordan, especially this past season, and being friends with Dakota is I don't know if it's I don't know what it is, but here we are. I met Dakota at Speedway 94. And I think just this past year, I really got to know his history a little bit, because we finally were like, dude, how are you here? Like, how did you get here? Right. And talk to him. And for those of you watching, Dakota works with Jordan on the 410 team, on the Mint 90 car, 410 here in Central PA. So I knew Dakota. We've known him for a long time. And, through him, got to know a little bit about his kind of journey to get with you, and started to get to know you a little bit. And really followed your season this year. And we're going to get into this past season a little bit and what's coming. But I want to go backwards a little bit, because I don't know this, and I maybe Chris and Jimmy don't either. But back up a little bit and tell us how you got to 410 at this point. What's your driving career? Did you a couple of the guys that we've had on previous weeks, excuse me, started driving when they were 5 years old, right? So, and then we had Kyle Keene, didn't start driving until he was 25.
Yep.
What's your journey? Where did it start for you? Family background in racing? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so my path is a lot more like Kyle's. My first race, I was 20 in a 358 sprint car. So growing up as a kid, I think my first race at Williams Grove as a fan, I was 7. My dad took me, and like I instantly fell in love with it. Like I was like real small. We would watch NASCAR races, but he took me to the Grove for the first time, and it was like, this is awesome, right? So every Friday I wanted to go from the time I was little. So I have 2 older brothers. Couldn't ask for a better family, but I wasn't like, they weren't in a position to put me in any sort of a race car, or go kart, anything like that. So by the time I got to be like 12 or 13, we got to know Rick Lafferty just kind of by chance, walking through the pits as a little kid, getting autographs. And we followed Rick around for a full season. Like wherever he raced, we were there in the stands. We'd go out to eat with him after the races. Like that was the thing. And like as a 12-year-old kid, that was badass, right?
For sure.
The challenge was Rick was in Jersey and I grew up in Camp Hill. So there really wasn't an opportunity for me to like work on the car at all. And I wasn't even old enough at the time to go into the pits. I mean, now it's changed a little bit that like you can get younger kids in, but in the early 2000s, like if you weren't 14, you were not getting in. So Rick and Mark Coldren were friends. Mark was racing at the time, and they were competing against each other every week at Port Royal. And I don't remember exactly how it all went down, but we were in the pits one week at Port after a race, and Coldren was pitted next to Rick. Somehow I met Mark. I ran into Mark again like the next week at Williams Grove in the pits. And he's like, well, hey, if you ever want to come like help us on the car. And I'm like 13 at this point, but like helping was polishing a wheel.
Yeah.
But that was cool. Like that was like the best thing ever. Like the first thing I ever did was polish a right front wheel. And that was kind of like my in beyond being a fan. So and that's the connection to Billy Kimmel that we'll get to here in a bit. But Billy Kimmel was Mark's crew chief whenever I met Mark. So it truly just started as a fan, and then wanting to get more involved, but didn't really have a way to do it beyond just being an annoying little kid, like bugging a team to listen to me, right? And luckily Rick was that guy, and through Rick I met Mark. It just kind of snowballed from there. So just starting to work with Mark's guys in his garage, Billy and the team that he had at the time, and just starting to learn, I mean, really from the ground up. Polishing wheels, wiping down radius rods, learning how to change gears. Yeah, I mean, like it just kept going. So I worked with Mark, man, I'm going to say until I was like 18. He got out of it for a short period of time. Mark Smith drove the 07 in 2007. So I wasn't a part of that then. But prior to that, I mean, it was 2 nights a week in the shop through high school, plus at the track every night. And that's back when BAPS would run Thursday night. So it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday with the 07. And Mark had quite the history of tearing stuff up, if anyone remembers his driving career. So I learned really like fast and well how to put a car together because we did it all the time. Like my favorite story, we had 2 cars, and like in consecutive weeks, he destroyed them both at the Grove. And it was the last race of the year. We were on Mach 1s at the time. So he rented Mark Smith's house car, and that got wrecked too. So not terribly bad, but it did get wrecked. So no, but super thankful to Mark. It's fun to joke around, right? I have that relationship with him still today, but to just take a 13-year-old kid and be like, hey, come work with us. Like I'm sure, I don't know if I could deal with a 13-year-old working on our car. Yeah. Well, we have Dakota, so kind of, but you know what I mean.
There it is.
but no, so super fortunate, and just both learning from Mark and then all the guys that he had around over the years, just to really learn the ins and outs of a sprint car and how they work and how to build them and try to start to understand setups and all that stuff. So not to drag this out too long, but the Mark Smith and Coldren thing lasted a year. Then Coldren got back into racing. He had a 358. He built a 410. He kind of did a little bit of both. So he had started water treatment by design like right around this time frame. 08, 09. So he was kind of scaling his own racing back, because a lot of people won't remember unless you were at the track in the mid 2000s. Like Mark would run 60 or 70 races a year at one point. Mm-hmm. So that was really where I learned, like, hey, this is how this operates. So just stuck with him even as he's kind of scaled his schedule back. And by this point, I was helping him for 7 or 8 years already. And he threw me in his 358 one night at BAPS at a practice session on a Wednesday night. and ripped around there like half throttle. And I think that was 09, so I would have been 19. And then the next year, 2010, I think we did like 4 or 5 practices throughout the year. And then my first race was the final showdown in November that year in a 358. And then it just kind of kept building. So the year after that, we did maybe like 10 358 races. And then, so that would have been like 2011. So Mark would still run maybe 20 or 30 races. And then like 2012, I'm racing like 20 times. That's when Mark started to put other guys in his 410. It's like Justin Henderson ran it down in Florida. Like Lucas had 2 stints in it, but he was in it for an outlaw weekend. I think Lafferty drove the car a weekend. So it kind of got weird as Mark was trying to figure out where he wanted to go driving. And basically, we just kept doing the 358 thing. I was running 358s that Mark owned, and he ended up hiring Doug Esch at the start of 2015. And that was a really powerful team. I mean, they won the Port Royal Championship. They had like 10 wins together. But we kind of got to a point, I guess, as a race team where things just got way too chaotic. I felt like I had won a 358 race. We were running well. Like I felt like we were a top 10 car most nights. But I was only able to race like 20 times a year. And I don't know, right or wrong, whatever, but I kind of started to feel like I'm not wasting my time, but like if I can't put all my energy into trying to drive, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do anything, right?
Right.
So during this time, like I would run my 358 on Friday, and then I'd go to Port with Doug and the guys with the 410 on Saturday, and then like we'd work to get both cars ready. It just got to be a lot. Like not a bad thing, it just got to be a lot. So Mark and I put a deal together at the end of 15. I was able to buy everything I was using of his to start my own team. And he kind of gave me like 2 to 3 years to buy all that stuff from him because he knew I couldn't afford to buy everything and also race at the same time. Right. So Rick Kaler, Rick's Auto Body, was on the car for a while. Him and I bought the 358 motor from Mark 50/50. We split it, and then I bought everything else from Mark and transitioned that in my own team. And Mark's still been super, super supportive on the sponsorship side of things, but like we just went completely separate. So everything got moved out of his shop, went to my house, had to form my own team, like the whole deal. And it was just quite different. Like nothing, when you look at the 07 operation to the 90, like different frames, different rears, like we truly like just split, not for any reason, just, you know, what I felt was where I thought our team needed to be, right? And he's been super supportive of everything, but that's kind of how we got to where we are. So I ran 358s 2 more years, like on my own, and that division just got to a point a few years ago where there's just a lot of crashes, and I think like in the last 2 months of racing, we were in like 4 wrecks, and I wasn't having fun anymore. It was like this isn't cool. Like every week we're wadded up, and I like, screw it. Like, I do not have the money to run 410s, but there's no other direction to go. Like, I wasn't going to step backwards to a 305. Like, I had no interest in that. I was like, well, let's just see what we can do. So we sold our 358 at the end of 2017. We sold that for $12,500. And we bought a $15,000 old Dash 12 head off of Anthony Macri's dad. And we went 410 racing in 2018. And I think we had that for 2 years. And then we bought like an older all-pro top end used and converted our 12 head to that, ran that for a year. And then like that would have been 2020. So between 2020 and 2021, I found another older $16,000 410. Like, what's holding us back? We can't race enough because we only have one motor. So let's get another one. It's like, well, it wasn't maybe the ideal way to go about it, but it's what we sort of had to do to race. And I was learning too, right? So like, even if I had the resources, how much better would we have been? Some nights it would have helped us, but at the same time, I needed like 410 seat time.
Right.
And so it was what we had to do to race more. And over the years, I think we've been getting a little bit more speed and finally got to a point where I definitely felt like the motor program was starting to hold us back, especially time trial shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember 2 years ago, we were probably 0.6 off most time trial races. Well, then 6 became a half second, and then 0.4 and 0.3, and now we're down to 0.2 of a second. But like that's all we have. Like Dakota and I would spend hours like going back and watching videos on flow, watching my hands, watching the car, like where are we losing speed? And we changed our shock program and freed the car up and like did all this stuff trying to make ourselves better and like knowing I was a big limitation too. And I felt like we got the car to a point where when you're wide open, like on the curb and you're straight and you're smooth and like you're watching and like there's not like we didn't scrub speed anywhere. Well, it's the power to get from turn 4 to turn 1, right? So at the end of this year, I made a decision like screw it, we're gonna go all in, like right or wrong, I don't know. So we sold both our motors, and fortunately we're at a point now, partly just because of the way the market is right now with used parts. Used stuff is valued a little bit higher than what it used to be because it's so hard to come up with the new stuff. It just lead times are so long with material delays. Yep. But we sold both of them and we took all of that money and put a deposit down on a brand new motor for this year.
Nice.
So kind of going all in on ourselves, right? So now if we suck in time trials, I don't really have any more excuses.
We'll just blame Dakota. It's okay.
Yeah, I have a whole book of like excuses that I haven't broken out yet, and like most of them all done. But no, but that's kind of how we got to where we were. So it's a little bit of a different path. Like if I could go back and change anything, certainly I would have loved to be able to race when I was 8 years old, right? And start in quarter midgets and go to micros and all that. So I didn't have that, which I think I'm actually really, I like that because I was able to learn the ins and outs of the car. And I think that as I started to learn like what I'm feeling, I knew what to do to fix what I was feeling, right? Like it wasn't like, you know, like what's this shock do? What's this do? Like I already had an idea, like, hey, we're gonna make this change, and I know this is what it's gonna do. And I think that's helped in some ways. Like it's not perfect, but then all the stuff that you just learn behind the wheel, like by driving, I've had to learn that. And I think we're at like 220-ish career races now since I started. So that's back to 2010. You know what I mean? So it's not like my average races per year has been 25 still, 30. And that's tough. I mean, obviously we want to be as competitive as anybody. Like nobody likes going there and struggling. But at the same time, like we're still not at that point yet, but like it takes time to get to a point to where like you can compete just for a top 10 most nights and then a top 5. Like it's a building process, and it's just something that you can't fix with anything but seat time. And I just feel like probably the last 5 years, every decision I've made has been, how can I race more? Or like going into the next season, like what's holding us back? Well, when I bought that second 410, it was, we're not running enough races to really get going. Like we would get to July and I'm starting to feel good. Well, like the season's over. Right. And I'd be 20 races in and Danny and those guys are crossing over 60, you know? Right. So every year it's just like, okay, well, how do we get better? What do we need more of? And more races, obviously, but I just feel like now we're at a point where my feel with the car, where we're at as a team, it was more about, okay, we need to get a little bit better stuff here. And it's kind of a step back because we are going from 2 motors down to 1. And I don't know the finances yet of like, when can we rebuild it? How quickly can we rebuild it? Because the idea is we're still going to be focused mostly on Lincoln, not just there, but that'll be the bulk of our races probably. So if we can run 20 to 22 races and it has to get rebuilt, well, like, where's that going to fall in the calendar year? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd love to plan it out. Yeah, like I'd love for it to be June or July and then be able to get that turned around in 2 or 3 weeks if the parts are available, you know, for them to freshen and everything, and then come back and run another 22. Like ideally, I don't know quite yet financially if that's going to work out or not. There's a lot of exciting things that have been going on behind the scenes that I'm more optimistic that maybe that could happen. But it's just, we're just going to wing it and see what happens. I felt like we were at a point that like, we got to get something better that we don't feel like, let's say that we're beat before we roll into the track. But after you run enough all-star races and speed week races and you're 2.5, 3/10 off and you're 35th out of 50, kind of, you know what you're getting, right?
I think it's Central Pete. Sorry. Yeah. So one thing you mentioned was, like, I don't know if it was the right way to do it or not, but it was your way. Like your way doesn't have to be anybody else's, and you don't have to share everyone else's journey to where you want to go. And you do what you can, with what you got. Right. And ultimately the competitive spirit to be like, I just want to keep going has overridden the need of, okay, let's take a break, stop. I don't want to do this for a year and we'll come back with better stuff. Like I can't say I'd be any different than you would, and being like, I just want to go to the track. I want to get to the track. I want to learn how to do this. I want to show up. I need to show up. I need to show up. So, but your journey is your journey. Like there's no right or wrong here, because at the end of the day, if you had unlimited funds, would you have the most of everything and run 60 races? Yeah. Right. Like who would say no to that? Right. So like that's part of the way this gig goes. And we talked about there, like you're at a point where, Central PA, I mean, obviously we all live it. We're all kind of homers when it comes to this, but like, it's not easy. And you want to run competitive around here in a 410 of it, even a 358, you might be able to get away with a couple things in a 358, but in a 410, I don't care if it's Williams Grove, Lincoln, or Port Royal, at some point there's some hardware that's going to be a deficiency if you don't have it. Right. So you're at that point. And I think that, you talked about that journey, and again, it's your journey, but like, knowing how to take care of your equipment, knowing how to make some changes and go, okay, now I have this figured out. I can go, okay, now I know what to do when I have that. And you start clicking off a couple of those better finishes, pick off a win, here or there. And you're like, all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we can go work on this and we can go work on that. And things start to come in line, I feel like, a little bit. And as long as pieces stay together, you don't end up in something stupid. I mean, that's also part of racing. So,
and that's kind of what happened this year, though. Like when you were talking about, you'd get to like June and start feeling good, and then you'd be out of parts, or the season's kind of over for you. This year you win at Latrobe, but then you find issues with the motor, right? Like a week later, it's like, dang, you finally hit on it, and you were running more consistent, and then it's like, damn, the season's over.
Yeah, and it's how it goes, right? It's racing. Like and part of it. It wasn't just also the performance. Like I knew we were getting quicker, and there's also nights. One of the things too that I've learned, and that really hit me the last 2 years, is screw everyone on the outside of your program. You know what I mean? Like all the naysayers, all the whatever. You gotta, as soon as you drown that out and you just focus on your deal and try and make your deal better, it's the best thing you can do. And that like what taught me that is like nights in the shop with Dakota, and we're like, well, like, this isn't ideal. Like, no wonder we weren't good that night. You know what I mean? Like, our engine's 15 years old. Like, we're not going to time that well. But also not use that as an excuse either, right? Like, there's been a lot of nights that we should have been better. And it was either me behind the wheel, or we missed it with the car, or a combination. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, that's the reason why all of our results were what they were, right? But it's
like taking shock valves the wrong way.
Yeah, which we won that heat or ran second or whatever it was. I don't understand how he pulled that off, but yeah, but yeah, it's like that with him. But no, I don't know. It's just kind of being fully like focused and committed to like what you're doing with your program and just where you think you need to go to get to where you're happy and to make the next step to keep you going. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely. So through all those times in the last couple of years, did you set goals for the seasons, knowing or not knowing what it might look like? Were there traditional goal settings as far as performance, or was it goal settings like I want to run this many races? Like, how did you go into a season and going, okay, here's what I want to accomplish this season? Were yours kind of like everybody else's? I think most people that we've talked to and would think about would be performance, finishes, wins, top tens, whatever. Were yours similar to that, or did you have kind of a different outlook on that?
Here lately, it's been more performance, but I feel like it's been realistic goals at the same time. Like it was stuff we had to work towards. Like going into 22, our goal was to win one race. Like we felt like when we ended 21, we had enough, like we were getting top fives, we're getting top tens, like we're starting to click these off. And not that we felt like, hey, we're right on the verge of winning, but we thought like another full year of learning, we should be able to do this. And but I think where I kind of screwed up, the first 2 years that I ran 410s, if I could change anything, back in 2018, I would have gone to Lincoln every single week and gone nowhere else and just ran the Lincoln regular races. But I wanted to run at Williams Grove. Well, like an old 12 head is not the thing to take to the Grove. We went to New York and we raced with the All Stars, and like we did all this stuff and it was fun, but like being as inexperienced as I was, like even having the 358 seat time behind me, right? Like going to a 410 is such a different animal, especially when you can only do it 20 times a year. So it's like, oh, we're going to go to the Grove. Now we're going to go to Port Royal. Now we're going to go to Lincoln. Now we're going to go to New York. Now we're going to go to BAPS. It was like it was cool in the moment, but I look back, I was like, well, I could never even like figure anything out because every week was a different place, right?
Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville. Like that cool experience, but like probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. Like, yeah, we made an outlaw show in Nashville. That was cool, but like from a development standpoint, the best thing we did, I think, was 2020. We said we're going to try and run all the Lincoln races, and that was our goal. Like, we're just going to try and run all the Lincoln races, and like if we don't, we don't. But I don't even know that we had goals that year that were like performance based. It was like, let's just try and run every race at Lincoln, and I think we missed 2 of them. There's some
Sorry,
but no, you're good.
You had to. I love it.
So the 2020, I don't think, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't think we really set a performance goal that year. It was like, we're going to run Lincoln full time, and let's actually figure out, like, where are we? Like, where am I as a driver? Where are we as a program? Like, let's just try and like get something consistent going. Like every 7 days, we're going to get back to the same place and build on the notebook and build on my mistakes from the week before. And like, what am I doing wrong? And that was when everything finally felt to me like, for the first time ever in my career, that stuff started to click. Like we clicked off a couple top 10s towards the end of that year. And then 21, like we had a couple top 5s, and we had more top 10s. We had more speed, like the whole time trial thing. Like, okay, we're getting closer. And then I think like going into 22, our goal was to double everything that we had done the year before. Like we wanted twice the number of top 10s, twice the number of top 5s, and we wanted to get a win because we were starting to run like fifth to 10th was never even a thing before. And all of a sudden, like, we did that a few times. And I think Dakota and I's goal a couple years ago was like, we just want to be somewhere between 8th and 16th every night, because at least we're not in the back third, right? And like, when you're a smaller team starting out, like if you, not that we didn't want to shoot high enough, but like you can get beat up really quick in this sport if you don't have all the resources maybe to like put yourself in the right spot every single night. And like that was our goal, was like 8th to 16th, and then hey, we're kind of doing that like 14th, 12th, 11th, 18th, 10th. You know what I mean? Like if we were starting to do that, and then like, hey, cool, we finished 4th. Hey, cool, we finished 5th. Like we started to get that, and I don't know. Like I wish there was more consistency this year. We went through a period in the summer where we just sucked, and I think some things changed with the tires. Which I didn't figure out till closer to August what was going on. They had the tire shortages. Nobody could get tires. Well, the old protocol of like a tire being manufactured in December and it's sitting in Hoosier's warehouse until April at Cure to get shipped out, like that was all changing. So if you talk to Hoosier, nothing changed, but it changed.
Yeah.
And we were struggling so bad in the features. Like my wing was trunked like 8 laps in. I could go all over the track. I had no stick, like all sorts of stuff. And like, we're like, how are we going backwards? Like results wise, like it felt like we were losing ground from where we thought we were building to. And just talking to some people and hey, like, this is what we're feeling. This is what we did. It was right at the end of the year. It was the second to last week of our season. We went to the Grove for Billy's race. We ran in the top 10, and we went to Lincoln the next night. We didn't do that great, but we were kind of stubborn and like didn't do with the car what we thought we needed to. And we're like, well, we're starting towards the front. Like we went backwards. So we finally like threw all this stuff at the car, kind of listening to what some people said they were finding with the tires, and we won out west. And the biggest thing was just struggling with like drive and side bite as the features went on when it got slick, and like the wing being too far back. Well, I think that race at Latrobe, I moved the wing back that far, over 25 laps. Everybody else was trunked. And then our last race of the year was the next night at Bedford with the All-Stars, which that was a whole different deal. Like talk about being underpowered. Like, yeah, let's go to Bedford.
Going
like,
uphill.
Yeah, like didn't work. But when the track slowed down in the feature, we had a good pace, and like the car was there. I wasn't moving the wing. Like we were like we got lapped, but like I stayed with the leader, and you know what I mean. Like it's a different deal on a big track. I know that we're proud of that, but I was like, we are on to something. And then, of course, I pick up a vibration like 10 laps after thinking, oh, yeah, I think we're actually onto something with this. Like, let's go back to Lincoln next week. And then I found out that we were almost blowing up, and that was the end of our year. So now there's new compounds and new tires. So everything that we thought we learned will be wrong. And we'll go to Lincoln to start this year and probably have to throw all the notes out again. But that's part of the fun of it, though.
I want to. One more thing from me, and you talked about that Williams Grove race and the Billy Kimmel race, and I went that night. There was, I think, was it World of Outlaw late models there that night? I want to say. So went there that night. Was actually, unfortunately, a spectator at the race when Billy got killed at Williams Grove. So I've always tried to make that race when I can. I don't know, just nothing to do with. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I should be there for that race. And then I didn't know the connection between yourself and Billy until this year, and got the story of why you ran the car and all that aside. That was a really cool night for a lot of reasons. But the one thing that stood out to me was watching. I stood on your trailer for the feature that night with Dakota, and you looked like you were driving with a purpose all night, right? And I think that there's a lot into that. It was an emotional night probably for you, being there, running that paint. It was that night, maybe a little fired up. And again, I'm not trying to get in your head or anything, but also you had just made a change in some suspension, some shocks, right? I watched you drive that night, and I was like, I almost felt like you forgot everything you ever knew and said, I'm just going to go drive the hell out of this thing. And it's maybe you didn't even do anything different, but it just looked like the car had speed. It looked like it got through the corner. It looked like you were being more aggressive. I mean, am I onto something with not knowing anything? Did you just kind of wipe that out and go, hey, I know I got really good parts here. I'm going to go drive this thing. Or did it just do what it was supposed to do and you drove?
I feel like I want to give all the credit to the factory cane shocks. And
you can, but I just, you look different. Like the car, I don't know. You look like a different driver that night.
As soon as I went out in hot laps, like my car felt different than it ever had before. And I mean that, like from a stability standpoint, like the Grove is such a hard place to get comfortable. And I have a fair amount of laps there from my 358 days, but like, it's just a tough place. Like what the air is doing, the long straightaways, where you have to put the car, getting into the corners late in the night. Like it's a tough deal, like a tough place to be comfortable, just the way it's shaped. And man, as soon as we put those shocks on, I was like, damn, like this thing, I've never had a car feel like this at Williams Grove. And I don't know. So like the first 2 years, I'll be honest with you. So that was the third year I did the tribute car. The first 2 years I was in my head the bad way. Like I couldn't put that behind me of like what we were doing. Like I was too focused on like, I'm driving the 47, right? Like it was very sentimental, but I feel like I was too in my head those nights.
Yeah. Got your head a different way of like pressure.
Yeah. And I, for whatever reason, whether it's just experience or the fact like, hey, I've done it 2 years now, like it's still really cool. But I remember the first year, like rolling it into the trailer and looking at it in my house. I'm like, damn, like this is Billy's car. You know what I mean? And then seeing that all night long, like it was kind of tough to put, not thinking of the accident, but just like the concept of like what that night was, right?
Right.
So maybe after a year or two of doing it, it was also easier to, hey, it's just another race. But I do say that was our first night on the FK shocks, and I just thought the car had such a tremendous balance. And then the next night at Lincoln, we were really fast early on, and like I said, we made some bad decisions adjustment wise in the feature, but we had speed. And then our third night on the shocks, we won. And then we never got to go any further with it, unfortunately. But I've never felt that good at Williams Grove. Like I'll give you that. And I've probably never driven the car that hard at the Grove. And I think some of it was that comfort level and the way the heat race played out. Like I had the confidence the way the heat race went going into the feature. And I don't have a ton of 410 laps at the Grove, but it was like up on the wall in 3 and 4. And you know that like that's not. I've gotten better up there, but like that's not my thing, right? Like if I can putt around the bottom like Donnie Kreitz style, like let's go. But I remember like blasting under the bridge the first lap, and I think Crimes was in front of me, and I was kind of like to his outside going into 3. I'm like, well, he's peeling to the bottom. Like, well, I remember like first lap, like, guess we got to figure this out now, and just kind of set her in there, and off we went. But it was just kind of, I think it was just the stability I had in the car that night beyond anything. Like, I hate to say that, but the car felt good. And I just was like, hey, like if there was ever a night to let's just do this, I did have the extra motivation, but yeah, I don't know. I'll give all the credit to Drew and the FKs, but I really do think that changed our program, and hopefully that shows going into next year.
What you got, Jimmy?
I just want to bring this picture up again because it's just such a cool picture.
It is, yeah.
Talk about your win at Latrobe. That's not a track that many people have heard of, really. I guess if you're in the Central PA, circle, and you like you said, you went to a bunch of different tracks. You had top 10s at Selinsgrove, Baps, and Williamsgrove, and then you got a win at Latrobe. Just tell us a little bit about Latrobe.
Yeah, so I didn't know it was a racetrack either until like the end of 21. I saw they were having a big race out there, and like whatever, didn't think much of it. And then as the 2022 progressed, it kind of goes back to that whole deal of like, it was an all-star race at Lincoln is when we went out there. I'm like, why are we going to go do this when there's a $5,000 to win race somewhere else that's
right.
like not all-star competition? Like, I hate to say it and be negative, but like we're going to go to Lincoln and we're going to be 3/10 off, which is going to be like 36 out of 50. And we're going to run in the back of our heat, run in the back of our B, and leave. You know what I mean? So it was like, well, hey, like let's go do this. It felt different than the first couple of years when we would just travel for the hell of it, like to have fun. I was like, hey, we can actually go out here and be competitive. Like I thought a $5,000 to win race in Western PA was going to pool like 30 cars. I mean, they don't have those.
But it's Western PA.
I learned. No, I figured that out, but unfortunately, they had a horrible car count. But AJ Flick was there, Shetler was there. Those were probably Cody Bova. He was there. I mean, there was some good cars. Like it's the guy, it's the guys that you see that are up front out there every week. You know what I mean? So it was disappointing in a way that they didn't get the support, but we just thought, screw it. Like, let's go out. We'll run for $5,000. And not that we thought we were going to go out there and like, oh, we're going to win. Like, no, but like, hey, like we have a shot. We have a better shot going out there and winning than we do going to Lincoln and like even getting out of the B probably for what we had. And half mile kind of reminded me of Selinsgrove, just the way it was shaped. Like, not that it was that fast, but like sweeping corners on entry. It was a fun place to race. And they had time trials the old school way where they used a stopwatch. So
Nice.
yeah. So the fun thing about this, I was so angry, like almost to the point of wanting to leave after time trials, because I found out this is with a stopwatch, and they start reading off the times. I was the first car out the time, and I think they said I was like 1.1 seconds slower than AJ Flick. And I'm like, I've never been 1.1 seconds off of anybody in my life. Like, let alone like what? Like, no, like it's not possible. So I was so pissed. I'm like, this is bullshit, right? Like, you're using a stopwatch. You can't do this. Like, what year is it? Like 1970? So I'm so angry. And like, I'm about to go bitch someone out. And like, I was like, I want to redo. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's no possible way. I thought our night was ruined. Well, here, somehow that had us fourth quick. And it was a 4-car invert for the heat race. So we're on the pole. So I'm like,
now you're not arguing anymore.
We're 1.1 seconds off. I'll take it.
That's the best stopwatch ever.
Yeah, like, okay, cool. So we started on the pole of the heat. We won the heat. And then we redrew for the feature and started third. And we actually fell back to fifth, like by lap 3. And AJ started up front. He got a flat right on the start, so he changed it, was right behind us, passed us. We fell back to 5th, and we were just like a little bit too tight. But there was this moisture strip right on the bottom, like right on the inside berm. And everybody else was just like, it wasn't really like a curb, but it was like, it wasn't like good clay like we have. It was a little bit more like dirt. So there was moisture there, but it wasn't building up to where you could keep your right rear on it. And they were all following that. And like, I was like, I think we got something here on the bottom. Like it's feeling good. Like as soon as our car started to free up a little bit, like 3 or 4 laps in, like I passed Flick back, I passed the next guy back. And it's like, just start reeling these guys in. And I think we got second coming to 5 to go or 6 to go. And Shetler was still like a straightaway ahead. But the rate at which we started to close, I was like, holy shit, we can do this. Like I remember getting 2 to go, and I did, like I'd closed the gap like from a straightaway down to like 6 car lengths. And I was nervous that if I showed him my nose, he was going to take the bottom because he had led the whole race and he was just up top. And I actually like thought to myself, like, I'm going to hold back getting into 1. I don't want to pass him to the white flag. Like I can do this, but I think if I show it, he's going to like he's going to take the line away, and it's over then. Like it's done. Like I'm not going to get around him on the top because the top's going away. So I actually like held back, and I don't know what happened to him. Like because he just kept getting higher and higher, and I like held back into 1, and I see him twitch a little bit, and next thing I know, like we're off at 2, and I'm in the lead. I'm like, no shit. So, and it was, well, now it's easy, but like don't strip for a lap. But it was a good confidence booster. Like it's good guys out there.
Right.
And it's just financially, it's such a different area. Like it's so weird to think like go 3 hours west and the whole world is different with racing. But it is like, it's unfortunate because the 410 guys out there should be racing for more money, but it's the way it's always been. So the tracks don't pay more. So now it's either, are they going to incur the expense to drive to Central PA with their programs built to be competitive where they race? Does that make sense?
Yep.
And it's not a knock on them at all because there's really good drivers out there, and AJ has shown that. Look at Cy Lynch. Like there's good drivers out there, but they've built their program to a point that they can sustain it racing for what they race for.
They're kind of in no man's land.
Yeah. So honestly, it was probably like the most equal of playing field we've ever raced on, because like what we had and what they have was probably a little closer. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And it just kind of put it into perspective of like an 18th place run at Lincoln actually could like be a win somewhere else.
Goes to show how competitive
How
it is around here.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of lessons learned at Lincoln and Williams Grove over the years that you searched around, you found something and was like, hey, I know how to pass cars. I've been passed and I can pass cars and I race around cars. And it was like, oh, well, that worked. And that was, so
yeah.
It is a weird thing where like, it's that whole, like, it's like a psychology thing. Jimmy's girlfriend would probably know the story about like, the animal that's in a small cage only stays small, right? And then you put them in a bigger whatever and they grow. So like, maybe an AJ Flick, and I think we've been having conversations about this recently, like love AJ Flick, right? Love that he comes to Central PA, but is he a product of his environment and coming in here and like learning, and he's probably getting better because of coming to Port Royal, and he's won a race or two, but like he could go to Lernerville and win a track championship and win 6-8 races. Right. So, and it's not like you went out there and going, hey, your expectations weren't to win, but why would they be, right? It's not like you've won 50 races in the last 2 years.
Like, yeah, and I didn't go out there thinking like we're gonna win, but I knew we could. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be like a regular Saturday at Lincoln, going there, and even like at the end of last year, like I thought, hey, if it goes right, like we can win at Lincoln tonight, but like we can definitely run in the top 10. Like, there's no reason we can't run in the top 10 at Lincoln on that's where I felt like we're at as a team on a regular Saturday. Well, going out there was like, there's no reason we can't win this race. If everything falls in line, you know what I mean? And it did. We had a really good car, and it all played out. But it was also good. Just, I think because the guys around here are just so damn good. Mm-hmm. Like, if you don't fire off great right at the start, right? Like, Danny's going to pounce. Macri's going to pounce. Like, just keep going down the list of names like they're gone. it's kind of like if you have fallen back 6 spots and it's like lap 13 and you're like, damn it, like, well, like Danny's gone. Are we going to run him down? I'd love to think we can, but I don't know. Like history shows we're not going to, right?
Right.
And but the whole Latrobe thing of the third back to fifth and then marching back forward, there was just something to that I hope I can remember of like, it's not over. Like it is not over till the checkered, because I did find a kind of a replay of that race that AJ Flick's mom recorded. And if you look at where we were on the track with 6 to go, like we shouldn't have won, right? Like the amount of the distance that we closed was just insane. And it's like, keep fighting till the checkered's out. Like whether you're 19th or 3rd, like it's truly not over, because maybe your car is like, it's there, right? But if you just kind of settle in, you're like, well, we fell back to 8th, let's just settle. Well, yeah, maybe you finished 8th or 9th, but who knows? Maybe if you would have stayed really like 100% up on the wheel, you'd have been 3rd. You'd have been 4th. Like we can actually come back to this. And why that happened that night, I don't know. But I hope that we can kind of build on that, and I can keep that like in my mind every night going forward. Like, hey, no matter where we are, like keep fighting, like no matter what.
So in an era of
Good.
in an era of aero sensitivity and the way these cars are all so close and aero matters so much, do you feel like during that race, as you're coming back forward, if one car moves down in front of you in your lane, does that end up as a different result? I mean, you with your experience and how these cars work.
Well, it was the way the track got. Yes, to answer your question, like if he moved down to if he was going to go to the bottom into 3, like let's say I didn't clear him off at 2 with a lap and a half to go, and I leave it to where like he can dictate his line getting into the corner. Like he comes down across in front of me, for as big as that track was, I'm gonna get tight. And even if I'm gonna go to the top, like I'm gonna lose momentum. I'm gonna roll out of the throttle. And now, not only that, like the top's going away, so now I'm going to be fighting for grip. He's going to find the grip that I've been in, like the last 10 laps running him down, and like it's game over. It's done. It's done, because it wasn't a deal where like if the top was kind of equal to the bottom, where I could have went blasting into turn 1 and like, hey, let me put it up here. Like there was none of that. So unless he decided to go back up, which like he wouldn't, like Dan's a good racer. Like he would have been like, oh crap, Jordan just tried to like pass me on the bottom. Like, he's going to go low. It's done. Like that race is over.
One more, and I'm gonna let Chris jump in here. As you watch that replay, if you saw it, did any of the cars behind you go to the bottom after you passed them? Did anybody move down?
AJ tried and he couldn't.
What do you think was there? Just you didn't set your car up to run down there because you don't have experience there. Like, what do you think that was attributed to? Where do you think he was just, his brain was like top, and he couldn't get it? Was it physically something he did, or just the car? Like, have you ever been in that rhythm where you've done the same thing 15 laps and you try to change it 1 lap and you're like, oh, that didn't feel good, and you move again? But it maybe was like, okay, I need to do it a 2nd lap to get in a rhythm. Do you think it was something like that, or do you think his car just didn't do anything down there?
I don't know, because he tried to make it work a few laps and it was like he just couldn't. And I think it might have been the way, and also I think pretty much all the guys I was racing with had raced there before. And because I watched a YouTube video of the race the previous year, and it looked like that race just stayed around the top. And I think it was a deal where you had to slow down more than what felt right to get to the bottom. But then there was so much grip from the center off, if you could keep the car rotating, that you just went right back to the floor and drove right down the straightaway. And it was like all the ground I was like, I would maybe sacrifice, pick a number, 0.2 on entry, but we gained 0.4 by the time we got back, off the corner.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a deal where he was carrying so much speed to the top that he felt like he was having to slow down too much. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like maybe it was just his car. Maybe he was too tight to root. Like I don't know, but it could have just been that deal where sensation wise, and that's tough sometimes, especially when you're out front. Like I know there was a night we were leading at Lincoln this year. We led probably to like 10 or 12 or something, and Danny got by us. There was a big crash up in 1 and 2, and I spun out. There was oil on the track or water or something. I was so, man, like if there was one race like you could have back every year, it'd be that race. Because we would have ran, like I'm convinced we would have ran 2nd, but it was a night at Lincoln where like 1 and 2, you either put it around the bottom or you were on the fence. Like there was no cushion. And I think like every lap that I led, I changed it because nothing felt good to me. Like nothing. Like the bottom felt too slow. The top didn't feel right. And like every lap I kept changing it up. Then of course you go back and watch. And it's like, you dumbass, like you should have just stayed up top. Like, that would have worked, but none of it felt good. So it's so hard when you don't see others either. But like you're saying, when you're in a rhythm, say you're committed to the bottom or vice versa, and two guys go by you and you're like, hey, maybe there's something to that. Now, like if you're Danny or Lance, like, yeah, they're going to go right there and do it perfect the first time. And like, oh man, there's all that speed. Like, I'm probably not. But like knowing like, oh, that was my screw up versus, hey, we're actually not going to be good in that line. Like we just got to try and salvage what we can where the car is working, right? But it's that's just part of it. That's racing. Like both inside the car mentally and being able to immediately change your approach to a corner, and also having a car that's neutral and like balanced to where you find the grip that you need when you have to leave the cushion. Because I mean, you watch like, not to keep bringing up Danny, but like at Lincoln, like he's the guy, like no doubt about it, he's the guy. And like he can just get stuck anywhere. Like he doesn't have to commit to the top, and like he can just drop to the bottom, and he's able to find grip, like with his foot, with the way he drives the car, with the way he pitches it in, like what he's doing. And that just comes with experience.
Chris, what do you got, buddy?
No, I'm just waiting for our resident Dietrich fan to come in here.
Not happening.
But I guess, Jordan, the only question I would have would be like paint scheme. Obviously, your paint scheme was so much, I would say it's so unique from anything you see other guys running. How did that come about?
Just by chance. Zach Barber with Lakeside Apparel. He's been doing my stuff for a while now. And I went down right before last Christmas, and we were talking about ideas. And we were just going to do the same, like black, fluorescent yellow, all that stuff. And like we had it down, like this is the concept, this is what we're gonna do. And I was just sitting in his office BSing with him, and somehow it got brought up like, I always wanted to do a mint car, and I always wanted to do a purple car, but like nobody would let me do it, blah blah blah. And I was like, well, I don't think I'd let you do purple, but I was like, I'd entertain mint, like whatever. And I left. It's like 2 days went by, and I text Zach. I was like, hey, if you just want to like mock up like what you're thinking with the mint and send it to me, like I'll look at it. And he sent it to me. I was like, holy shit, like that is our race car. Like screw every, because I was so, you kind of get your deal going where like you want to kind of have like an identity, and I thought mine was like the fluorescent yellow numbers as I had forever, and like it's so different, but I was like, man, it looks so badass. And yeah, so that was all his creative mind. But I was pumped with how it turned out.
Hey, there's you rolling the bottom at Williams Grove.
I can't get lower than that.
No, that might have been the lowest car I saw that whole night.
That was such a screwed up heat race, but yes, that was one of those like you kind of had to keep like going lower and lower to get the moisture.
It was dustier and dustier every time a car went by. I couldn't see anything. It was great. So we just got through Christmas this year. Did you go back to him and say, did he come up with any other random weird colors it could be, or can we let any cat out of the bag here? Are you doing the same thing?
So we haven't talked at all.
You don't have
about
to
design. No,
okay, you don't have to admit it. You don't have to.
So my plan's to stick with mint. I love the mint and gold thing. We'll probably tweak it a little bit, but we are still talking to a few people about next year, sponsorship wise. Awesome. And that could change the way the car looks or where people are placed or stuff like that. There's a lot going on. That mint over money. No, I think it'll work regardless. But now we'll just have to wait and see. But you probably want to get over to Nash. But I'm not in a rush with the design of the car, so we're not going to have our new motor until like the end of March or early April. So that is how screwed up like the supply chain is in the racing industry. So I put the deposit on the new one with Don like this third week of September, and the lead time on heads was 7 months from him calling them in the next day.
Wow.
So when you put all that together, and then like by the time he gets them, there's things that he has to do before the thing is ready to go. We probably won't be out until, I mean, maybe we'll get lucky and like the very end of March, but my gut's just telling me it might be mid-April till we get out, and it's just how it is. So like the time frame that we're working on as a team is so much different than the last couple of years, because the last 2 years we've been at the Icebreaker, and just the way everything's kind of like things are moving a little bit slower this off season, but not in a bad way. So I don't have all the final answers yet to go to Zach to be like, hey, let's start working on something. All exciting stuff, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
possibly new people coming on board is a big deal, or how stuff's going to get laid out. So that'll probably be like a late January, early February deal with Zach until we start doing placement and designs and stuff like that. But yeah, unless it's something super crazy, there should still be mint on the car.
That kind of answers. We do have a sorry to turn you down here. We do have a fan question here from Sean Donnelly on Facebook here. Will your car be on display at Racing Extravaganza? I think he kind of just answered that.
Yeah, unfortunately it won't be. Hopefully by the time that show rolls around, like our car is basically race ready minus the motor in it. But we were just working on it this past weekend, and it's pretty much, all pretty close now. But yeah, we won't be able to make that show, unfortunately.
We will get you out of here. I appreciate your time, man. Like, I love it when we get to hear a story and get to know you guys. And we, as much as we're kind of new at this, we want to grow our fan base, but we want to get the stories out for you guys. And hopefully someone watching is like, hey, this is a guy who can get this done. Just give him a little bit of help here and push it over the top and see this green or this mint 90 in victory lane some more. So thank some of the people that helped you out here last year and some of the people that helped you out on the crew, minus Dakota. We don't need to talk about him. No, but thanks some of your sponsors, man. Shout those guys out for who helps you out.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that I feel super fortunate about is I couldn't do this at all without the people behind us. Like, I know we all say that, but I mean, it's true. If it wasn't for every single one of them, like, there would not be a 90 car. And, like we talked about, you race the way you have to race to be able to race, right? Like, maybe it's not the ideal situation, but being able to strap into a 410 is like, hell yeah, whatever it takes, we're going to do it. And I just feel super blessed to have the chance to do it, because I know there's 1,000 people that would love the chance. Yeah. And just thinking back to like the little 7-year-old at the Grove that like was hooked on it from the first time, like to have that chance to go out there and race now is just, it's the coolest thing in the world. And I couldn't do it without everybody. So Water Treatment by Design, which of course is Mark Coldren. He's been big even since the start, when we kind of split, we went our separate ways as race teams, but he's still been super supportive and, but also behind us as a sponsor to allow us to do what we do. Alloy Wheel Repair Specialists, they're on the hood. They're kind of like our transportation sponsor. They own the trailer and our mule, and they help out in many other areas too, but they've been big. Tim Pfeiffer, State Farm insurance agent. He's in Camp Hill. So if you don't have State Farm, you're stupid. They sponsor Patrick Mahomes. So clearly they sponsor me. It's a good connection.
This was going so well.
Yeah, right. Rick Mitchell, Brian Arnold, Jack Giambalvo, Hyundai of Hanover came on this past year, which was awesome. X1 race cars. And I got to give a shout out to, I keep talking about Don Ott. I'm really excited about what we have going on, but Fit Racing Engines in Dillsburg, smaller outfit. Nate and Garen Culp, George Culp, their dad used to race, or like a smaller engine shop. And the one motor we had, they did a lot of work on too. They kind of work with Don, like they have a good working relationship. And it was something they took care of. So I don't want to leave them out, because we actually won with their motor in the car. Nice. So I don't know where our relationship lies going forward, but I do appreciate what they did. DMI, FK Shocks. Let me go through in my head here. I think that's pretty much everybody, but everyone I just kind of named, they really have been with me forever. Like if you go back to 2016, WTBD, Alloy Wheel Repair, Tim Pfeiffer, State Farm, Rick Mitchell, Brian Arnold, like it's a core group that they're behind us. They believe in what we're trying to accomplish and the path we're going down. And we could not do it without them. And I forgot Roach Wings, but there's one I probably left 2 or 3 off. I should have wrote this down. But no, truly everyone that helps us, even if it's just the product sponsors, like being able to call up Ryan Linder that builds the X1s. If I don't talk to him over 2 weekends of racing, like my phone's ringing on Sunday morning and he's calling me. And I think his craftsmanship is second to none. He has a smaller shop, but like I don't know that Maxim is going to call Jordan Givler every 2 weeks. Does that make sense?
Right.
And like Dylan Sisney's on his stuff. A lot of guys up in New York, Chuck Hebing, Jason Barney, like they kick ass up in the New York 360 market. And I think a lot of it's just the whole monkey see, monkey do thing where like, well, Maxim wins the outlaw title, so everyone kind of goes towards Maxim or goes towards this. Not that their stuff's any better or worse, but man, I'll be an X1 customer until Ryan stops building cars.
It's awesome.
And to have those relationships with those manufacturers is big, I think.
The one guy you talked about was Rick Mitchell. Funny little connection. I met Rick Mitchell working at Hyundai.
Yeah.
Apple Honda. I met Rick before I knew you, and I knew of your name, but this was now 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think I met Rick like right whenever I started Exceleration, and he's been helping us where he can since then. I mentioned Rick Kaler earlier. I do still have to mention him. So Rick's auto body is no longer a thing, but Rick's involvement with our team remains unchanged. So Rick and I bought that 358 motor from Mark, like partners, and then his involvement with the motor program has also stayed, and he's continued to help support engine bills, things like that, where he can over the years. So Rick's not like big on the car anymore, but behind the scenes, he's been a huge supporter. And it's not even just about money. It's about the phone calls of like, luckily, like with Rick, with Mark, guys like that were in racing themselves. Rick Mitchell used to race, like guys that have been around it. They get the struggle and the climb of trying to get to where it's going. And it's just cool to have the encouragement of like, keep going, guys. You know what I mean? Like keep going after this. It's cool.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on, taking your time. Look forward to seeing you out there whenever the car gets there, whenever, metal decides to create itself and put it all together. Cause, I think the whole world is, the last, 2 years of this stuff has been a challenge. So hopefully get some good news in the springtime. And honestly, you don't need to be out there for the icebreaker anyway. Wait till it warms up a little bit. I don't want to see anything get torn up before it needs to. So 2-day icebreaker show. We're probably gonna have all kinds of people in. The Outlaws are gonna be in town early this year. Like you'll be fine. There's plenty of races to hit. So good luck to you.
To the new design, so I can order more shirts.
Oh yeah. By the way, you're welcome to whoever I donated a shirt to last summer. I bought a shirt at Jordan's trailer, the black shirt that says F and Mint on it. Okay. I had my camera in my hand. I walked somewhere, sat it down to do something. I wandered away from the shirt, came back, and it was gone. So poof. Congratulations to whoever I bought a extra large Jordan Givler black F and Mint shirt for. You're welcome. Whoever decided to walk away with that. But now, dude, good luck in 2023. It is 2023 now. We can actually say good luck this year.
Yeah.
And we'll see you at the racetrack. And these guys, we're gonna get Jimmy and Chris into pits a lot more this year and connect with some of these guys we've been talking to and have you back again after some good runs this year and some wins. We'll have you back on.
Yeah, sounds good. Hopefully we're chatting about a Lincoln win here before too often.
Yes.
Let's
And,
go.
Or a Williams Grove win. That'd be cool.
Or that too.
take
Either
that.
one I'd be pumped with. But no, I appreciate what you guys do. Any exposure on our sport is a great thing. And being able just to tell our stories as drivers and teams is huge. So I appreciate what you guys are doing too.
Yeah, man, it's really for you guys, and we're just rookies, so we're trying to figure all this stuff out. And if you win at Lincoln, I'll be in victory lane if your team lets me. You'll have to give the special approval to let me across the fence. They keep guard on that, so you'll have to.
It's not like you just can't come through anymore.
No, I'm like blacklisted. I have a target. They look for me. So there's some places.
Yeah.
Places I can't go.
There's some places I can't go. No, but no. Good luck in 23, dude. Appreciate you having you on, and we'll have you back.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jordan. Take care.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, guys. You're gonna take a quick 2-minute break. Thank you, Jordan, again. That was great. We're gonna take a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be right back with Nash Ely.
Man, we come together.
Welcome back, Turn Two Terribles. We are back. Thank you, Jordan, again for coming on. That was a very, very awesome interview. We have another awesome interview lined up here. We're gonna bring on our next guest. Jeremy, you wanna introduce him?
Yeah, we're gonna have Nash Ely on here this evening. 358 driver here in Central PA. Kind of continued theme here the last couple of weeks. 410, 358 combo. And he dabbles in a couple in something else too. So we're gonna get to know him a little bit. This will be a little bit of a journey for all of us to learn a little bit about Nash. So let's bring him in here. We'll get him going, not to keep him up too late. We're going to hear about his journey here the last week. So welcome in, man. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So we're actually sorry, all of us are a little distracted right now. We're all watching what's going on in this Bills Bengals game, man. It's
yeah.
Played football myself, and all of us have been around it, part of it. It's not like any of us are not familiar, but that's scary. Prayers to him and his family. Hopefully he ends up okay there. So hey man, welcome. So we're going to do kind of what we've been doing with everybody each week and get to know you a little bit. You're a younger guy, but I got to meet you this year for the first time. I got to take some awesome pictures of that beautiful red, white, and blue race car, and it stood out to me from the first week I saw it as a newbie to photography, and I was like, man, that thing just it just shines right, whether it's day or night. And I will continue the theme of white race cars are the best race cars when it comes to a photographer's camera. Not even me, just the camera. The camera's like white race cars. So that's where I first got to know you. And I kind of was like, hey, check this out. This is pretty cool. Because at that time, even I was amazed. Like, look what I did. This is kind of neat. So, and 358 Garage, I got to know a lot of those guys. So tell us a little bit about your history and your background. I think I have a little bit of knowledge, but I would really like to hear it from you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a fourth generation race car driver. So on both my, on my dad's side of the family, his maternal and paternal side of the family, both of his grandfathers raced. So Don Kreit Sr. on my grandmother's side, that would be her dad. So that would make Donald my great uncle. And then on my paternal side, my dad's grandfather, who he never really knew, he passed away at a very young age, but he ran stock cars back in the 50s and 60s. So I definitely come from a long line of race car drivers. Even then my dad ran 410s and 360s and midgets a little bit here in central Pennsylvania. So kind of always been around racing. And then even furthermore from that, all of my family is involved in motorsports in one way or another. My dad runs, or is at least the guy on the phone at DMI, which they make quick change rear ends for sprint cars, modifieds, late models, all that stuff. My grandmother, my great uncle, they have the Kreitz Auto Parts, Kreitz Oval Track Speed Shop, so they sell sprint car parts out of there. My grandfather, he's a self-employed fabricator, so he does a little bit of everything on fabrication, but he definitely focuses more on the racing side of things. He makes, even just on my car, all the front axles, bumpers, Nerf bars, wing trees, W-links, you name it, he can do it. So we've got a full machine shop, manual machine shop. He welds, does all that stuff. So, and then myself, I work for Hyper Racing here in Lewisberry. They make 600 micro sprint chassis. I more specifically run their fuel injection department. So I can do anything from build injection systems to dyno engines, tune them. I do all the wiring side of it. And if you call up the Evo fuel injection line, I'm the guy that's going to answer the phone, talk you through your problem, sell you something, get you faster, whatever it is. So, but I guess I didn't really start racing myself until a lot later than a lot of kids nowadays. Obviously like Jordan just said, he started at 20, he's really late. But a lot of kids that when I did start racing, when I started racing against them, they had already been racing since they were 4 or 5 years old. So I started racing when I was, I think 10 or 11, something like that, running go-karts. My dad was still racing at the time for a bit. So it was more so just kind of like a one night a week kind of thing. And then when my dad retired in 2015 and stopped racing himself, then we kind of got a little more serious and more involved in my racing as much as I can in the 600 ranks. So did that for 5 years, and then I guess it would have been 2021 was my first full year running a sprint car, and I did that USAC East Coast circuit all of 2021. Ran every single race they had. Really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Then about halfway through 2021, we put a wing car together for the first time to run. What we planned on being was going to be a couple URC races, and ended up losing a motor running the USAC East Coast deal, which was actually my winged motor at the time. So then I met another gentleman, Rick Miller. He had some 358 engines that weren't being used at the time. So he said, hey, you've got the car, I've got the motors. Would you want to put one of my 358s in, run some race at the end of the year? And that's kind of how I got to 2022. And last year ran the whole 358 deal and love it. It's been a really good deal.
So many things there. Give me one more time. Do you have a Kreitz in your lineage?
Yeah.
Grandfather?
So he would technically be my great grandfather, would be Don Kreitz Sr. So this would be on my dad's side of the family. His grandmother's his mom's name, would be maiden name would be Kreitz. So her dad was Don Kreitz Sr. Her brother would be Don Kreitz Jr. So he would be my great uncle. So there is some Kreitz lineage in my family.
So you had no options other than to drive a race car. So, okay, got it. Check. That was always meant to be, clearly. So for hyper racing, you said hyper racing builds 600 micro chassis. How does the fuel injection become a part of that? So is that normal where a chassis manufacturer also does in-house engine type wiring? Like, how's that work differently than like a Maxim, right?
Yeah, so the micro world is kind of a little bit different than the sprint car world. The sprint car world is, I guess, it's easier to explain the micro world. A lot of the guys that I deal with, so I don't sell cars, I don't sell the parts for the cars. I don't really get involved in anything on the car side of things. I pretty much just exclusively handle the fuel injection side. But a lot of the customers that we deal with, they want to call up and they want to order a race ready car. So they want to get, they call up, they say, I want a race car to, we give them the options. This is what you can do. And they say, okay, tell me when it's ready to get picked up. So we will build the car, bare frame, actually assemble the car as, a roller. I sell engine packages, do the whole deal. So we'll go out, buy the engine for the customer. We'll deal directly with the engine builder. We'll actually install the engine in their car, plumb it, wire it, put it on the dyno, tune it. So when they get it, you literally could leave hyper racing and go to the racetrack that day. I mean, it's really as easy as that. For whatever reason, the sprint car side of things, I don't know if nobody's just necessarily capitalized on it yet. But a lot of those people are much more kind of individualized. They want to go. I don't know why it's that way. I guess I don't know. I think probably if I had to take a guess, we definitely get a lot more people. And I've even noticed this just over like the course of the last year, especially with things streaming like Flow and that kind of thing. After the shootout last year, they would call me up and say, we've never raced anything. My boy and I, we watched the Tulsa shootout on Flow and we want a micro. And they say, they know if they come to us, we can offer that support to somebody that's never raced before, how to set it up, how to maintenance it. They don't necessarily have to build it. They buy it from us pre-assembled so they can see how it's supposed to go together. It's kind of I don't know why it's different, but it is.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking is why that might be. I mean, I think that, you look at micros, it's sort of a ladder. Of a micro, you start from something else, you get into a micro, you leave a micro. So it's like, well, I'm not going to spend 15 years of my life racing micros, either my kid or myself or anyone else. So, hey, here's what I want to do. Here's his next step. We're not going to ever do a career in these. So I don't need him to learn how to build these things. I just want him to learn how to drive and get the experience. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think you get up into the full size cars, it's a little different where everything's so specialty and everything is so, you could be you can build it, right? You can go a little less expensive on this and you can spend your money on that and you have different people. So, DMI, they want to get into building chassis, but DMI may not have a specialty in building the best this or the best that, where a guy in a 358, a 410, a 305 is like, no. I know that that's better than that, and I know that that's better than that. So I can understand the fragmentation a little bit. That's probably where my brain goes, but also I'm thinking, man, 305 World Race Saver. Like you might be on. See, look at this. Business plans right now, my guy.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of weird too. You get much more of the micro racing is much more. I like to describe it as like clicky sort of thing. Like when I went to the Tulsa Shootout, you walk down the aisles, you've got the driven aisle, you've got the 10J aisle, you got the hyper aisle. All the hyper guys are together. All this company, they're together, and those guys, they only order their parts from hyper racing. They can get everything from hyper racing. Doesn't matter if it's tires, the chemical, the oil they put in their car, you name it, they buy everything from us. Or the D1 guy, they order everything from D1. It's much more clicky versus you don't really have that in sprint car racing. It's like, this guy runs Maxim, this guy runs Triple X. It really don't matter,
So hyper racing, you're involved there, and that just had you in Tulsa last week, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
left Christmas Eve and just got home today, actually. So it's a very long trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Was it your first time going down there for that?
No, so that's kind of how I initially got involved with hyper racing. I obviously went myself when I was racing. I started running their cars. First time I went was when I was 14, my first year on their cars. And we went to hyper that day for whatever. And I just said, hey, I know you guys are going to the shootout. Would you guys need any help? Like any, free help? I don't, obviously I don't want to get paid or anything. I want to go see it. And so I went out with them and, obviously met everyone. And I raced those guys on a weekly basis. So I kind of already knew them and just became, over the years, really good friends with them. And I think since that would have been like 2017, since then I missed 1 year. And now I've been there, seen it, done it. I'm pretty sure as long as I work for Hyper, I'll probably have to go every year after that. But it is a very, very long week. The first year was probably the easiest because it was just like, oh my God, I'm here. This is so exciting. This is so fun. Now it's, it is more work, but it's good. You get to go see a lot of people around the country that you talk to, maybe every month or every couple of weeks, but you don't necessarily, you haven't put a face to a name yet. So that part of it's very cool. And just the sheer size of that event still amazes me every time that there are a lot of little cars in the country.
Not to turn this into a hyper promo, but hey, we're here, right? So how many hyper cars were in Tulsa? Now, I don't want to say you could take one car, turn it into three, but I'm just saying how many hyper chassis were in Tulsa? Would you estimate?
I honestly won't even know where to start. So like, I guess to put the size of the event into perspective for a lot of people, there were 1,700 entries for that event alone, and they run 6 classes there. So there's basically like 4 main classes, and then there's 2 classes that are more so for kids. But just to think about 1,700 entries in one building is a lot. So that doesn't necessarily mean 1,700 cars. Right. Most times cars are going to run 2 classes at the least. But there are a lot. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. There's a lot of people jammed in one building. So
when you all roll down there, how many people from Hyper roll down there together? Or not together, but in general from Hyper Racing? How many people were there from the company?
So Hyper employees themselves, probably, I think maybe 6 or something it was. Usually we've got like 2 people that run our parts trailer. To my knowledge, we're one of like 2 chassis companies that actually comes with a fully stocked trailer to, just to support customers. A lot of the other chassis manufacturers, they go out there more so with house cars and drivers, and they're going out there to win drillers. And we bring a lot of cars out there too. We brought, I think, 20 cars out there this year or something like that. Of customers from Pennsylvania and North Carolina, where we load their cars up into our trailers and we haul them out there. But yeah, probably 6 or 8 employees of our own that go out.
So you mainly work in injection side of it. So on a given week, you don't know what's going to break, but how busy were you during the week?
Well, your loading day is always very busy because that's the people probably haven't raced for, couple months at that point. They just went a lot of hours in the cold to get there. So the first day it's always, hey man, my car's not running. And it's something, usually it's some silly type of problem that you just got to fix pretty quick. first like 2-3 days, really busy, whether that's troubleshooting an issue, could be something new that showed, just so happened to pop up when you actually get there. To my knowledge, 600 micros are, on the dirt circle track side of things, the only car that uses electronic fuel injection. So sprint cars use mechanical fuel injection, which is, realistically pretty dated. Everyone's street car has electronic fuel injection, but 600 micros, there's certainly a lot of I like to call it like a black magic around it, so to speak. Most guys don't know how electronic fuel injection works, and a lot of them don't even really care to know how it works. But we have pretty sophisticated data acquisition, where a large portion of my job when I'm out there is pulling that data acquisition, looking at fueling, really a whole lot of different things at one time, and then tuning that fueling while I'm actually out there, making sure that everything's running as absolutely best as it could be for their biggest race of the year.
Okay, so let's get back to your career a little bit in driving, because that's why we're here. I wanted to learn that myself. Like, I when I heard you're going to be in Tulsa, and by the way, full disclosure, Facebook Nash, and I'm like, oh, Tulsa, are you going like as a fan? Like, what? I didn't even know you worked for Hyper, so here we are. Shame on me. But anyway, so got to know you a little bit this year. First full year in 358s. From where you were before, what said, hey, full season 358s, this is what I want to do? Is it ultimately to get to 410s? Like, kind of where did that path go? Because, again, you've been racing for a little bit, but it's been a short little like, hey, I'm over here. And, okay, 358. Where did that kind of go to? Was that like plan progression? Where do you go from here?
It wasn't really planned. So I ran the 600s for like 5 years, and my dad drove for a gentleman, Gene Frankowiak, who he has become much more than a car owner, more so than anything, probably a family friend, and really most times just a family member. So my dad drove sprint cars for him, and he was on me for a long time when I was running 600s. Hey man, let's put a sprint car together. Let's run this USAC East Coast thing. He's a big non-wing sprint car guy. We always joke he was born about 500 miles too far east. But so he was on me to do that for a long time. And I actually, I kind of put the sprint car thing off for a while because I really enjoyed the 600s. It was, something my dad and I could do. I didn't need to show up with a crew. I could maintenance on myself the whole way throughout the week. I didn't really need anyone's help, all that stuff. So it finally kind of got to a point where he's like, hey, if you want to do it, let's do it. If not, no big deal. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So he was definitely more so a proponent of the non-wing sprint car racing. So that was kind of the first place to go, just because that was something he really supported and wanted to do. And coming from 600s, I had a lot of non-wing experience. So it kind of felt, that was fine with me. That was cool with me. And actually, I really enjoyed running the non-wing stuff. It was fun. It was different. A lot of the places you go, the fans, they don't really see a lot of non-wing sprint car racing being in central Pennsylvania. I like the allure that you didn't go to the same racetracks every week. You got to go. It was a touring series. So, we might be in Delaware this weekend, Jersey the next, Pennsylvania this weekend, whatever it was. And then, of course, being that we are in central Pennsylvania, wing sprint car racing is a thing. Everyone does it. And my dad really only kind of ever ran wing sprint cars. So like halfway through 2021, running that USAC East Coast deal, my dad was like, hey, I think I want to put a wing sprint car together. Would you want to run it? And I was like, well, yeah, of course, more time, the more you can race anything is always going to benefit you no matter what you're doing. And he's like, okay, I'm going to put it together. It's going to be that USAC East Coast car. That was Gene's car. That was all of his stuff. And he still helps me out on the wing stuff, of course. But my dad's like, I want to put a car together. It's going to be my car. Kind of, he's going to do it himself, sort of thing. Still using Gene's motors and all that. And I ran a wing sprint car race, and I just really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I thought it was cool. And I felt like it would, moving into 2022, running more wing sprint cars was going to make me a better non-wing sprint car driver, just because I feel like it's probably a little faster pace, going to different places. And I think that the more that you can run of anything is going to make you better. I look at, the Kyle Larsons, the Christopher Bells, the Sammy Swindells, whoever it is, they have proven that time and time again. And then towards the end of 2021, had another gentleman, Rick Miller, come to me. He was running 358s with his son for a little bit, and he had some 358 motors that weren't being used. So he came to me, he said, "Hey, do you want to run them?" I really enjoyed running the 358s. I felt like it was a good class. The car counts were pretty well. I felt like the guys that we were racing with were good, competitive. I feel like the nice thing with 358s is that there's a good mixture of young guys that are on the pedal and want people to notice them, and guys that either have run 410s and their 410 thing is kind of faded away. It's not going to happen anymore. Racers that have a lot of experience, right? Whether that I look at you can really go down the line of 358 guys that have a lot of experience or ran 410s at one point, whether that's a Rohrball or a Frankie, whoever that is. So then 2022 rolled around. We were going to do like kind of an even mixture of wing and non-wing races. And then pretty early in the year, we kind of just decided it would probably be better to focus one way or the other. And I felt like I kind of led us more so towards the wing side of things. That's what I wanted to do. So that's kind of how I got to 358, and I really like it. It's an awesome schedule. Works really well for my dad and I and everyone really. And I feel like it's a very competitive wing sprint car scene in Pennsylvania right now.
And it's funny you said that because we were talking to the guys in the background, Chris, Jimmy, and I. We were talking about you, and I said he's raced more than one division in Central PA this year. I said, "You know what it is?" And the only reason I knew that is because I knew the paint scheme. If I didn't hear your name or the announcer, if I didn't know the scheme, I wouldn't have known you raced another division because it did end quickly. Like I didn't see you after a certain point this year in the wingless 360s, and I was wondering what that was about because maybe it was only set up to be 5 or 6 races. Who knows, right? So that's pretty interesting because I saw you early on this year run at Port. I think Williams Grove. I think Port and Williams Grove at least once or twice, and then all of a sudden, this is the same car with a wing on it. So, like,
Bloomsburg.
Looking back on it, hindsight's 2020. Did stopping the wingless stuff help you in the wing? Do you think you progressed because you were able to focus on one thing?
I'm a very big proponent of you. It's tough when you look at the guys like I used the Kyle Larsons and the Christopher Bells as an example of diversifying themselves and becoming better racers because of that. They're also very fortunate in the fact that 99% of the time they show up with the helmet bag and drive. So, on my end, race car does not go to the racetrack if I'm not working on it. So, my race shop is based out of Sinking Spring. I live in Harrisburg now to be closer to Hyper. So, when I was doing that USAC East Coast deal, there was, they had some midweek races. There's a lot of traveling involved. There's a lot of like leaving work early, not going to work at all. I was at my race shop like every single night. Versus this year here, focusing more on the 358 and running the Grove and Lincoln. The Grove's 15 minutes from my house and Lincoln's an hour, so it's a little bit more of a relaxed schedule. I don't know if I would necessarily say that it helped me focus on the 358 deal. Certainly took a good bit off my plate took a lot of work off my plate, I guess. But I still think if there was 2 of me, right, or the crew was doubled, or I didn't have to work on them as much, which I don't even know if I'd really like that. But if there wasn't as much work involved, I think it would help me to run both, I guess, to make a long story short.
So, I watched your season and you're pretty damn competitive and you're a lot of speed in that car and you haven't had a ton of experience in it. So you have laps, but again, a full-size sprint car, wing, 358 division, Lincoln Speedway, it's a damn competitive class of cars and you can hang there with the best of them. What do you think helped with your success there that learning curve made it shorter? Just was it your experience in watching all those years? Was it like, hey, it's just, I don't know, I just do what I see and it feels good. I just, that boggles my mind how talented you guys are with like limited experience and going against divisions like this.
Well, I'd have to mostly, I'd say probably my dad and my grandfather. So, my grandfather, he's worked on race cars since he was a kid. He was, he worked with my great uncle Donald back in the day, especially when they were racing all the time. So that was back in the mid '80s. They were trying to run the Outlaw Tour just themselves. He's been involved in the sport since the mid '80s, so that's 30 some years at this point. He's been around the block, seen a thing or two, knows a thing or two. My dad, obviously, he started racing himself in 1994 in sprint cars in 358s, and he raced all the way up until 2015. So there's easily 20 some years of experience there. And then my dad, obviously being in the in the racing industry on the sprint car side of things, he's still on the phone with people every single day. He never really got out of touch with what's going on, what the trends are, that kind of thing. I would say we can race a lot. There's certainly a lot of 358 teams that maybe they can only run the Grove or they can only run Lincoln. We do the full schedule. We run every race we can, whether that was the Grove, Lincoln, that race at Susky this year, the 2 at Path Valley. If there's a 358 race, I'm going to be there. Probably, I'd have to look at my dad's experience for sure. There's a lot of times this year I get out of the car and I'm kind of hanging my head and he just laughs at me and I'm like, what are you laughing about, dude? We're terrible, the last like 10 laps or whatever. And he's like, Sonny, lap 10, I just wish I could have thrown a timeout and been like, you got to fix the, X, Y, Z. Cause he's seen it. He's done it. He did it himself. He knows the pain, he knows exactly what I did wrong. So he takes a lot of on the drive home that night, what did I do wrong? Well, he probably had an answer for me before I even got out. So it's a lot of years of experience behind me that definitely make it a little easier for me.
So I'm sorry, I get when you start to talk, these guys get going. I'm like, man, that's like 3 more questions I got. So with Dad's experience, and he stopped in 2017, you said
2015
yep. Stopped racing. Is he? I don't know your dad's history a ton. He was a Port Royal, Williams Grove guy mostly, and that was before I was going to Port Royal a lot. I was a Lincoln guy. I live in like almost Maryland, so like I stay south. Yep. Now I travel a lot more to Port Royal for reasons. But could he still hop in the car and show you how it's done, or has he ever talked about that?
I mean, I would say because he's my dad, because he's my hero, I'd say absolutely. He actually stopped racing in 2015 due to a lot of concussion issues. Actually, okay. is kind of what got him. All concussions that came from running sprint cars. So his last race in 2015 was Rolling Wheels, an outlaw show at Rolling Wheels up in New York, which that racetrack's no longer around. But that night they set the record at the time for the fastest average lap in a sprint car. They were doing something. It was crazy, 154 on the average or something. And he had battled a couple issues earlier in the year, kind of shook it off, didn't really think much of it, and then really kind of showed its head there. He just couldn't really do it anymore. He would experience a lot of symptoms while he was racing that bothered him. Kind of like seeing things in fast forward was the best way he could describe it to me. And I was starting to kind of get to the point too where I was ready to race a little more seriously, or he felt like I probably needed to start racing more seriously if I wanted to do it in the long term. So yeah, that's kind of how that all worked out. So I've asked him actually multiple times, more so. The last time I asked him that probably was in like 600s. We had 2 cars going at the time. I'm like, oh man, why don't you race one night? I'd love to just help you out for a night. And even if you go ask him now, he's got no desire. He did it, saw it, lived it, faced himself. He's just and there's a couple other like podcasts my dad's on and stuff. He tells people all the time, he's like, I have just as much fun racing with my boys as I do racing myself. So
that's interesting because you don't hear that a lot. You there's that drive to always do it. And it sounds like he's so connected and he has his own thing going on as far as maybe not behind the wheel, that it's different for everybody. But man, like I can't imagine probably being in his shoes of like, I don't know. I guess it would be different, right? Where the injury stuff is obviously more important. Health is more important, but it would be like, man, that drive just doesn't go away. But he's obviously fulfilling that drive within your career a little bit, within what he's doing with the business. So that's pretty cool. So 2022, you got the Rookie of the Year at Lincoln, right? Is that what I saw? Rookie of the Year at Lincoln.
22 Rookie of the Year.
Which is a feat in itself with that field and the amount of rookies that came into that division that has speed and some experience, and not in 358s, obviously, but that division I think is going to be more of a pipeline and feeder than it ever has been. And listen, I'm just a fan. I'm a big dummy, but that 5x5 wing, that square wing, I think has made it a true, more than ever, feeder division to a 410, just for driving habits alone. Even if we have weird engine combinations and we're not 360s around here, would you agree with any of that? I mean, I asked someone that, who did I ask that the other week? And they were kind of like, well, they were 50-50 on. I believe it's more of a feeder series now than it ever would have been in the past. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably have to agree with that. I think, there's a lot of allures to the 358 thing. Yeah, I think, probably going to the weird wings thing was kind of before me, of course. But I think that probably helps make them look. People like the fact that they look like I don't want to say real sprint cars, but the weird wings definitely probably threw some people off. Yeah, I'm sure that also did do a lot of weird stuff, driving habit style. I think it is certainly turning into a really nice feeder division. You see a lot of guys step up from 600s into 358s. I guess I probably see it too because I deal with a lot of those guys, at work, or I race them myself, and then I see them get into the sprint cars. But there are a lot of 600s in central Pennsylvania. So if they want to step up to something, a wing sprint car, it's probably either a 305 or a 358. And I think the nice thing with 358 is, A, it's got a little bit more power than a 305. And B, they race at the same racetracks you're going to be racing at if you do want to make a serious push towards a 410. You're going to run the Grove, you're going to run Lincoln, maybe the occasional Susky or something like that. So yeah, I think it is a feeder division. We're seeing a lot of young guys get up, whether that's your Logan Rumsey, your Cameron Smith, your Jaden Wolf, all kids that are on the pedal and want to prove themselves, want to make sure that everyone there knows who they are.
I have a question for you, and this is more of a selfish question for me because Bloomsburg's Fairgrounds is right down the road from me. You raced there last year in USAC East Coast, am I correct? Or no?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah.
What's your opinion on the track? Because I know it's good.
So like last year when I ran there, obviously I think I was one of the first races to actually be on that track. I did the USAC East Coast races there, and I did some of the USAC Eastern Storm races there with the 410. Has a lot of potential. I think it's in a somewhat of a, I don't want to say a bad place, but I hope that they're not setting themselves up for failure being in the middle of Bloomsburg. It's definitely, I never thought that I would see a new racetrack in my lifetime. So that is very cool. Opinion of the racetrack itself, I thought that it actually raced really well. I thought it raced very cool. There was one night there, place had a big old gnarly curve. You could run the bottom, you could run the top. It was very cool in that regard. A couple things, I think there's just like any racetrack, there's a couple things they could fix. At the time, they had a lot of dust issues. Yes. Like just being able to see was a really big problem on the racetrack itself. I'm sure it was not any better from the stands. And lighting. That was really the other thing. It was dark and dusty, which is not a good combination. But then again, I would be more amazed if they hit it right on, hit the nail on the head the first time. It's a cool racetrack. Like people ask me that all the time. They're like, what's your favorite racetrack? I like racetracks that are round and brown. I'm not really too picky.
I like that. And with them, they look like they're going to more of a speedster division. And I don't know. Do you think that might suit a smaller car better?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it's not a super big racetrack. I think it's big enough that you can have, there's no problem having big cars on it. I think something that was kind of weird for them that they did a lot of is they were always racing different nights. I think that in central Pennsylvania kind of hurts you. Like you can go down through the list. The Grove races Friday, Lincoln races Saturday, Port races Saturday, Grandview races Saturday. Big Diamond races Friday nights. It doesn't matter if it's a sprint car track, a modified track, whatever it is. People know, and especially, realistically, the crowd that you're going to track at, say, like a Bloomsburg or something like that, it's probably a little bit of an older crowd. Those people, they might not necessarily follow as much. Oh, they're racing Thursday this week. Oh, they're racing Sunday this week. Now they're racing Saturday this week. They need to know Bloomsburg races Saturday. If if we want to go see a race, we got to be at Bloomsburg on Saturday, or we got to be at Bloomsburg on Thursday, whatever that night is. I don't know if their problem necessarily was the type of cars that were racing there, as much as they had a really weird schedule, and it was kind of always something different there. I don't know. They went about it a little bit of a strange way. Not there's anything wrong with that, but a little confusing, I guess, from the outside. It's a little confusing.
That was a selfish question for me, because that's my home track, 5 minutes down the road. I've been pulling so hard for it, and I
trying to find a driver to not fight him on Twitter about it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Jimbo, by the way. Why do you not put Jimbo as your name?
I should.
He will when Danny comes on.
I kind of got back and forth with it with Danny on it on Twitter, and honestly, he was completely right. But. But that was my selfish question, so I'll step.
He's willing to die on that hill. It's okay.
But I really appreciate the driver's point of view on that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, from the outside too.
Go ahead, buddy. Oh no, go ahead. You're good.
I was just gonna say, from the outside looking in, I agree with you that I'm using Lincoln Saturday, Williams Groves Friday, Port Royal Saturday. I had to get in contact and follow their social media to know what was racing and when and how and what dates and when does it go. And I think they were trying to find their own way. I don't know that it was obviously it was planned and you come out with a schedule, but I think they were just trying to find who they are a little bit. And then they're not only are they fighting kind of who are we, what do we want to be? And then they're fighting their own town. So I just think it's a very difficult situation all the way around. So from an outsider, I agree with you completely, Nash. And I your take is, that I never thought about it that way, but I looked at it that way too. There's this track up north, and I went up to the All-Star show and was like, this is cool, but when do they race again? What do they do here? Is this all the time? So what a great little, what an experience it was the whole night. It was just awesome. It was cool to see something different, but it felt like it was we put this together to try it out. That's what it sort of just felt like,
They're trying to find their footing. I really believe it. I think they found it. I hope so.
Right. Yeah. So Nash, coming off the Rookie of the Year stuff, what are your plans for next year? Obviously, you're a busy guy with hyper racing and your own stuff, but what is your racing plans for this year, I guess?
So rolling in here to 2023, I'm thinking, we're going to do the whole 358 schedule again. Anywhere they have a 358 race, I'll be there. Definitely the Grove every week, Lincoln every week that they race. I saw Susky. They just released they're going to have, that Dirty 30 race again. That's awesome. Awesome for Bill Devine to put that together. I think that's a really great thing for the 358s to get a little bit of love. I think that is kind of right now it's our one big race of the year where they throw, and maybe I'm missing one just off the top of my head, but they throw a lot of money at that race. The racers, I'm really glad that the racers supported it and that it was the highest attended race of the year. There's nothing worse than when they do throw that money up and maybe a guy shies away from it because he figures that there's going to be a lot of people there, and maybe that's not going to be his night. But I hope Path Valley has some races again. It was really awesome. John gave us a chance to come out and race there twice this year. I really like Path Valley just because I really like small tracks. So that was cool. And I ran really well there. I ran second. Of course, actually, the two places that we only hit once or twice this year, Susky and Path, I ran second at both of those. Those are my two best finishes this year. Only get to go there once a year, but whatever. But yeah, pretty much there's 358 race. I'll be there. Just got another car in. Gonna get that deal together. Got some motors being built, some fresh bullets. So hopefully everything pans out there and goes well. I think I'm going to have at least one of them to start the year off with. So I'm really excited about that. Race as much as we can. If there's a race, we'll be there.
Awesome.
And looking ahead, do you aspire to be 410 racing someday, or are you just good with what you have while doing your hyper racing thing?
I would say, I mean, definitely for right now, the 358 just works out really well for me. Works out really well for my dad. So you would think working for companies involved in motorsports, it would be very easy to get away and just go to the racetrack. That is very rarely ever the case. Still a normal job, just like any other job. So the racing 410s in Central Pennsylvania, I would say probably more so Central Pennsylvania than anywhere else in the country. It's obviously, you guys know, I mean, it's cutthroat, it's do or die. So you have to be all in 110%. And I don't know necessarily, without doing that full time, I don't know necessarily how you do that. So I'm a never say never kind of guy. But I think with how much we work and all that stuff and really just like our capabilities, the funding, all that stuff, running a 358, I can run a 358 as much as we want, really. You know, like I can run every 358 race in Pennsylvania. So nobody's racing more than me. That is, in my eyes, definitely a very good thing. Just like Jordan talked about a lot, during his segment, it's really tough to stay competitive if you can't race all the time. So when you have guys like Anthony Macri, Danny Dietrich, Little Freddie running 2 or 3 times as many races as you are in a year, there's nothing wrong with that. They do it because they have to do it to perform at that level, and I respect that 100%. But if you can't do that right off the bat, it doesn't matter how much money you have, what your equipment is, how hard your motors hit, if your cars are on every night. How do you really compete with that? How do you stay up on that as a driver that doesn't have experience? Maybe you can do it if you race for 20 years and then you step back and you say, I'm going to run 20 races and come out here or there and be competitive.
So Lance Louise.
Obviously probably my uncle's team has shown that, time and time again. But no, I'm very happy. I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. I'm a never say never guy. Maybe I'll run a 410 at some point, but the 358 thing schedule wise works out really well, and we can afford to do it. Fortunately, very lucky for that. And I just like it. I think they're really good guys to deal with. I think it's a good class, and we're racing sprint cars. So
it's awesome. I look forward to finding you in the pits a bunch this year.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What about URC stuff? Any dabbling there to see something different? Do something on a night that there's nothing else going on?
Again, I'm a never say never.
Never say never.
When they do stuff like that, when they do that 358, 360 challenge race, like at the Grove, if they do that again, like they did this past year, I'll probably have a 360 in for that race. Hopefully those guys do get a bunch of races scheduled. And if there's an off night, we can go, we can maybe go run a URC race or something like that. But definitely, primary focus is the Grove and any 358 race, Grove, Lincoln, Path, Susky. I've heard some rumblings of some other places booking 358 races. So hopefully that happens. But yeah, I'd say not my main focus, but possibly.
Of the tracks you've raced so far, anywhere, any division of anything, favorite racetrack?
Brown and Brown, Jeremy. He already said
Bloomsburg,
this.
probably. No, I'm kidding.
All right, Jimbo, calm down over there.
I would say probably two places that I really like, and they're completely absolute opposites. I like Selinsgrove just because you get that old fairgrounds feel. Yeah, you get that old fairgrounds feel from it. There's a lot of history at that racetrack. It's badass fast. It's like you never feel like you're slowing down. You can run the top, you can run the bottom. You got a lot of room. I really like Selinsgrove just because of there's a part of me that just thinks sprint cars should be badass and fast and all that.
That's a big part of us. That's a big part of all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably I'd probably even put this track ahead of Selinsgrove would probably be Kutztown action track.
Place is badass.
You could probably debate if it's a sprint car track or not. I had a lot of fun when I ran the sprint car there. That place has just always been very close to my heart. It was always very competitive in the 600s. And then when we did go run the sprint car there, I had a lot of fun. It's just very close quarters. We don't have a lot of little tracks in Pennsylvania, so that place is just very special to me.
Did you junk a car at Port Royal late in the year? Was that you?
Yeah, about halfway through the year, we killed one down the front stretch of Port.
That's what it was. Because I think somebody was parked next to you, and I remember looking over, man, like I want to say hi to Nash, but that's not going well, because they were loading the car in pieces, I think, in the trailer that night. I forget who was over there. I don't even remember who was parked next to you that I was talking to, and it didn't look like it was going very good. It might have been the night Kyle was that the URC night. Was Kyle up at port that night, and he was parked, and because he ran out of fuel.
Kyle might have been parked next to me that night. I think you're right.
I think it was because he was running the URC race and he was running out of fuel, and he was like doing pretty well and ran out of fuel. And I was checking in with him at the end of the night, and like your stuff was over there in pieces, and I was like, "Oh man, he's having a rough night." You were okay. I was like, "Hey,
Yeah,
that was a tough one."
Yeah.
So the scheme on your car, the red, white, blue, silver. Can you pull that back up again, Jimmy?
absolutely.
Who helped design that? Did you do some of the design on this thing, or I mean, it's not overly complicated, but yet it's sharp and simple and effective. Where did that come from?
So that there is actually a my grandfather's side, his dad raced back in the 50s and 60s, and he passed away at a very young age. He was in his 20s when he passed. So my grandfather helped a gentleman at the Reading Fairgrounds back in the day, and his name was Red Coffin, and that's actually where I get my number from. That's where I get 22 from, and that paint scheme is actually how his cars were always done up. They were red, white, and blue, mainly white car with the red and blue, the stars on there. But his one of his signature things that he did was the ghost numbers, which on the top of my wing, you can see it's kind of like a gray 22, and then written through the center of the number is written out 22. That was kind of something that was his thing. So that's kind of where we got that whole scheme from. It was actually a Reading, a throwback to Red Coffin. So Brandon Raymer lettered it. Chop Design. He goes by Chop Design. Brandon Raymer. He was on here last week, obviously. But the funny part of that is that his mom, actually back in the day, was in the Red Coffin fan club. So it kind of all came full circle.
That's pretty.
That's
cool.
amazing. That is cool.
Yep.
So for 2023, you said you're going to kind of do the same thing. Give us a shout out. Who helps you up and down the road each week, and sponsorship and funding? We talked a little bit about it, but give us the rundown. Give us some shout outs to some people that help you out.
Well, I'm very fortunate. I have a lot of people that help me. So I just know right off the top of my head, probably going to miss somebody. And I think something that I am very proud of is that year after year, I have the same guys that help me. They always come back, and we continue to build relationships with people over a multi-year, over the course of many years. So a lot of people that help me even go all the way back to actually helping my dad. So, my dad, he funds a very good portion of my whole deal. Gene Frankowiak, Rick Miller, those guys both there, they do a whole hell of a lot for me. My grandfather does a lot of work for me on components anytime I tear something up. Nick Macri Concrete, gentleman Rick Gosher, AutoFix of Ephrata. Sean Martin, he's been with me for a lot of years. He Viper Risk Management, does some insurance stuff. Brad Nawatarski, Specialty Rigging, he's been with me as long as I can remember. DM Truck Trailer Services, Darwin Martin, he's been with me for the last couple years here. DMI, obviously I use all DMI components, come from my pops, but that's actually my grandparents that have DMI. Whole lot of people help me out. I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but they make everything go down the road.
So the one other question that I had, and going backwards a little bit, probably out of order from what we're used to, but goals. Did you set goals last year? Did you accomplish those? And what do you look at in 23? And is that based off of 22 success or lack there, whatever your success rate was on your goals from there?
I don't know that I'm necessarily really a goal setter, more so just you go every night, you do the absolute best you can do, and that's all you can do. If you leave and you didn't leave a single thing on the table, what more can you really ask of yourself? I think something I am definitely very proud of. Didn't have to run a single B main my whole rookie year here, doing wing racing the full year. That's really cool to me. Shows that we unload well, we get out the gate really well. Being that the 358 class is so competitive, if you don't unload well, your night's over. If you don't hit that invert, you got a long sled ahead of you. So I think, that was really good. Biggest race of the year at Susky for that, that Dirty 30 race. We ran second there. That was kind of a good kick in the butt for me, I guess. Good confidence booster. I felt like really probably towards the second half of the season, after I actually killed that car at Port, things got a little more consistent for me. I felt like I could kind of consistently get myself up. I had a string going for a while of top fives in a row. Just keep running top five. I always say if you run top five long enough, eventually you're gonna get your way into a win, whether it's on accident or not. So I would say goals going into 2023 is really just kind of pick up where we left off in 2022. I felt like we left the end of the year really competitive on a nightly basis. I felt like if nothing went wrong, I felt like I should be fighting my way up into the top five. Not that it's nothing's ever guaranteed or anything like that, but I felt like a strong top 10, and if we're on, I should be racing my way up into the top five. So I think if we can continue that in 2023, you just got to put yourself in position every night for everything to go your way, and wins will come.
Are you an iRacer?
I have it actually. So behind my laptop right now is my computer setup. I got I got all the monitors and all that stuff, but I have not been on iRacing in a very long time. I don't know why, I guess necessarily, but very busy, I guess.
Well, Lincoln Speedway is on iRacing now, so if you need some extra laps, we'll be happy to kick your ass because that's what we do. That's our race car.
Probably will too.
But it is a lot of fun. It's enjoyable for sure, and that's how I even know these guys is from iRacing. And then we met in person, and the Turn 2 Terrible is derived from we're a bunch of jackasses standing in Turn 2 and yell at people at Port Royal. So, like our buddy Brett Perigo going by in his slow ass, wingless Sportsman going 16 miles an hour. He can hear us as he's driving by.
Right, that's actually how it started. Brett Perigo could see us waving over the fence.
But no, I was just curious. I've never seen you on it. A lot of the guys we've actually had on have it, and some race more than others. And obviously, is this time of the year, if anyone's going to race, it's usually about now. I think Cameron Smith, Jaden, obviously Brett Strickler, and Kyle Keene. I met Kyle from iRacing. I'd say almost. Well, we didn't ask Jordan about that because Dakota's definitely an iRacer.
Jordan Givler answered it. He said, "I don't play games."
Dakota's trying to get him on it.
Nash was here for this. This is before you got here.
It's not a game; it's a simulation.
Because Dakota, passed for the win over Michael Millard tonight. So Jordan might point out it's just a game.
Wait, someone passed Michael Millard at Lincoln?
Dakota passed the car.
I'm not saying it. Never mind. Okay. Nash, thanks so much, dude. Appreciate you hanging out. Get some rest, my guy. They drove, by the way, 26 hours.
Wait, you drove back today?
Not today.
Yeah.
26 hours.
No.
Well, yeah, we left yesterday at noon, and I was out with the truck and trailer, so I can't drive the truck and trailer. Even if I did have my CDL, I can't drive out of state because I'm not 21. So I was just riding shotgun the whole time. But we drove about 12, 13 hours yesterday, and then my truck driver wanted to sleep. He wanted to take like a little 2-3 hour nap. I don't know if you ever heard of like the Tulsa flu. Okay, very common thing. People go out their first time and they get ridiculously sick. Well, this guy was like hacking up a lung. So what was supposed to be like a 2-3 hour nap turned into like an 8 hour sleep in a truck stop in Ohio that I woke up at this morning. So we drove the rest of the way home today. Got home like 2 o'clock or something, 3 o'clock, and yeah, been a long last like 2 days.
All right, buddy, we're gonna get you out of here. Get some rest. Thank you so much. We're going to do the same thing we just told Jordan. We're going to have you back after a Lincoln win this year. We're going to drink a beer for you because you can't yet. I'm going to have plenty more of them here ready to go.
July. I was just going to say after July.
Oh, man.
Oh, I'm drinking beers with him after July at Lincoln.
Let's go.
But you could be on before Lincoln or before July, along if you win at Lincoln.
Yeah,
that's what we're going to hope for. Yeah.
Don't wait to July to win. Like, you can win ahead of time. You can just catch up in July.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks,
Absolutely.
dude. Get some
Thank
rest,
you so
Nash.
much for joining us.
Good luck.
Thank you, Nash.
Thank you, Nash.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
That was awesome. Thank you, Nash. Thank you, Jordan. Both of you guys for joining us tonight. Great interviews. Every single time, I know we say this every week, but honestly, man, I learned so much about the cars, about just the racing industry in general, everything. Every week with these guys. It's been such a great experience, and we really appreciate all these guys taking their time out. and sitting here and talking with us. And we appreciate every single one of you guys that are watching us, listening to us, joining us every week. It's been very fun. You guys have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, like both of these guys tonight, man, are like cerebral. Like I got the vibe of like these are smart dudes and I'm an idiot.
Absolutely, dude.
Like these are
Up
like
here,
this,
man.
like what Jordan talking about, kind of his path, and like he's intentional and thoughtful and like planning, and I can appreciate it because that's not my brain. I'm like, that's expensive, and I'll buy it. I'm in. It'll make me go faster. I'm in. I'm an idiot. So like, I mean, yeah, if you have the money, we talked about that, but like the way he's just his persistence about it and his thoughtfulness about it, and it's like there's no rush, to it. And then Nash, he said he wasn't 21. We didn't ask how old he was, but like this guy is mature beyond his years.
Man, yeah, dude.
Like his intelligence, his thoughtfulness, his family history, he has every right to be immature and kind of doing things that his age is, and he's thoughtful about his career, and that's more important than racing. And like, man, it was wild. It was amazing to me, the maturity level for both of these guys in different stages of their career. That really jumped out to me, and I learned a lot about both guys, and I'm familiar with both. But I never really talked to Nash a whole lot on race nights. And I've said this before, I'll go into pits and say hi to someone, but it's their night. They're doing their thing. I'm a fan. Hey, nice to meet you. Good luck, and move along. Like, I'm not going to stand there and just wait for them to walk over and talk to me. I'm nobody. So, but it was cool to get to know these guys a little bit more tonight. And, while we were on here tonight, and I think we have to, if we're motorsports fans.
Yeah.
I think we have to acknowledge it. I got notification here while we were chatting. We talked about the Buffalo Bills player, and I think that's still in limbo. I haven't looked in the last few minutes, but we also got word that Ken Block, the world-renowned automobile driver, has passed away from a snowmobile accident in Utah, I believe. Injury sustained there, so just a rough night for.
Yeah,
that doesn't. These things don't happen. Like you don't hear about like. What a crazy night. So prayers to his family.
The past hour has been insane as we've been trying to do these interviews, and I appreciate Nash was so great.
Right, Nash was great. I mean, it was great of him to wait, because Jordan's interview was so awesome and went so long, and then Nash came in and met it with equal, in-depth answers, and I really appreciated learning so much about him and what he's going on.
But we've all had a little eye on what the Ken Block news, which is it's big for that's all of motorsports right there. He's an icon. That is a huge loss, and also we know the Bills player here, that whole situation. But thank both of these drivers, Jordan and Nash, so much. We wish them the best of luck next year. We hope to talk to them again soon. We thank every single one of you for watching us. And asking questions. Thank you for putting, if you're watching us live, make sure you're putting questions in the chat. We'll try to get them to these drivers and ask them these questions or whatever you guys want to hear. And if you're not watching us live and you're listening to us later, we still really appreciate it. Make sure you like, you subscribe, bring those notifications, all that stuff. All that helps us out, continue to keep this going. So thank you guys.
Live. Spotify probably tomorrow. All the podcasts will be tomorrow. And then stay tuned next week. Figure out what the plan is. Might be a little different. Might not be. We don't know yet.
Yes. Keep an eye out. But otherwise, thank you guys. Happy New Year. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Tonight's second place finisher. Plenty of fans here, Brett, and a solid second place finish.
Yeah, I got to shout out the Turn 2 Terror Boards over there. They're all a bunch of good guys to hang out with, talk to. I really